So we are going to have 5 groups, and then we go into what we call a systems diagram. Each of these issues does not occur in isolation. It's a complex web of issues. So each group is going to come around an issue, and you use different sets of stickies to show underlying causes of the issue and effects of the issue. So on this side, you are showing underlying causes. So each underlying cause, you write it on a piece of paper and stick it on this side of the issue. And then on this side, you show the consequences. We advise you to go to 2 causes so that you can go at least to some root causes. Not just, we don't think that a problem is caused by one level of causes. There could be underlying causes. And also in effects, there are immediate effects, but there are also secondary effects. Is that okay? So at the end of the day, we want to see a complex system. This problem put in a system of causes and effects. And then our interns will move around with some string because they are relationships. So everywhere there's a relationship, you connect it with a string.
So for causes, we'll use the red. If you're saying, like, for instance, this is a cause of this, we'll just link the causes with the red string, effects with the pink string. So today you have to keep colors in your heads, but we'll be around to help. Yep. So I think the first thing is to generate, just tick the things that you think are causes, and then stick the things that are issues, and then we can help you link them with the strings.
We started off with 2 issues that had been separated in the classification before, which was limited livelihoods diversification and low income. And in our discussion, we realized that low income is actually caused by limited livelihood options, and the causes and the effects were more or less the same. So we decided to condense it into one cluster that is related. We classified the causes into 3 different stages, if I might say. The first stage is the immediate causes, then you've got the primary, then you've got the secondary causes. We have limited access to information, for example, as one of the causes for low livelihoods diversification, and that is caused by limited infrastructural development, which in some cases is also caused by poor governance and limited funds. Another example, the reason that there is limited livelihood options is over-dependence on agriculture in some of the rural communities, and that is caused by limited entrepreneurship skills amongst the youth, and that is caused by poor education and skills training. And then an important one that we couldn't quite directly link to the other causes is the fact that some communities, just by their natural location, they are remote, the area is dry, so unfavorable geolocation can actually result in limited livelihoods options for the communities. And then because we don't have time, I'll quickly move to the effects. One of the effects for limited livelihoods diversification is that there is unemployment, which causes crime, which also causes poverty, and in some cases that can cause increased levels of prostitution as people try to get sources of income, and then that can lead to increased HIV/AIDS incidents in the communities. Limited livelihoods diversification and low incomes can also cause food insecurity. And then we had limited social capital appearing both as a cause and an effect. And in as far as it is a cause, we say that sometimes when people have limited livelihood options, that results in low self-esteem, and that is caused by limited social capital. But also where you have low livelihoods diversification, that can result in limited social capital as one of the effects, which causes poverty in the end.
So in our case, we looked at high levels of crime, and then we've got a lack of education. So as you can see off the bat is a very complex diagram. So I'll start here with regards to the first or layer and then sort of expand to the second. High levels of crime, cause of that, lack of employment, drug abuse. In addition to that, lack of education. So that leads to people not being able to find employment. And then perhaps also lack of recreational facilities also sort of, contribute to drug abuse. The effects of that is that, first of all, as an investment destination now, high crime levels will certainly deter investment. It's also got a high tax burden on the economy in the sense of you need to have prisons and systems, there's law and due diligence. So you can see how that makes a contribution to the tax burden. Another effect that obviously comes from the drug abuse, etc., is dysfunctional family structures. And once again, that also sort of links back to more drug abuse and higher levels of crime. And in some way or form, crime and corruption is related. And additional corruption then contributes to crime levels. What we found, and I think the point my colleague pointed out, Prof. Mugabe, with regards to this cycle of poverty is affected by all of these because you cannot lift yourself out of that poverty because of the lack of education. There's also the high crime levels. So that cycle is sort of continuous. When we look at the second issue then, which is the lack of education and empowerment, the concentrated ownership of land rights and deteriorating or very bad government policy around ownership and land rights. And that's a cause of sort of, perhaps at government levels, the education levels are not appropriate to understand fully how to extract maximum economic value out of your land assets. And additional causes were obviously some historical. In the case of South Africa, my colleagues referred back to the previous legislative system in terms of apartheid. And then also, if you look at the rest of Africa, sort of some colonial education systems that haven't changed over the last 50 years. And that, of course, leads to low self-esteem. You'll find, and I think it was mentioned in the previous group as well. Another cause is also cultural belief systems. So in female and girl education in certain countries where females are expected to go to work at a much younger age, you'll find that they have kids at a much younger age, and well, that sort of then leads to poor health. And essentially a lack of growth because of a lack of education. So you don't have an educated population. The effect of that is low levels of productivity, low levels of technological innovation, and low levels of acceptance of technological advances as well. And then, of course, everything links back to that cycle of poverty with regards to the lack of education and empowerment. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's have some quick comments, reactions. Sure.
Thank you. The cultural belief and the low self-esteem, I agree they belong there, but what we've also found out is that they play a big factor here. For example, the expectation that men are supposed to look after their wives, they are supposed to look after their girlfriends. That affects them and puts so much pressure on them that sometimes they resort to crime. So that cultural belief would be also one of the reasons of the crime. Yeah. But I like that they've linked nicely these two issues that they were looking at.
Our main issue was high HIV prevalence. And as I'm sure you all know, the relationship between these causes and effects is also sort of like cyclical. So for us, the main overarching issue was poverty, because poverty was linked to all these and also linked to the effects as well. So for instance, in cases of poverty is linked to unemployment, in the sense that, like, unemployment causes poverty, which also leads to high HIV prevalence. Then we have issues related to teenage sex, transactional sex, all resulting from poverty, all leading to causing high HIV prevalence. Then there's issues related to gender-based violence. For instance, gender-based violence, like with men forcing their wives or partners to have unprotected sex with them, directly linking to HIV. Sorry, we don't have the link here, but I think there should be a link between this. So there's also poor knowledge on HIV prevention knowledge, directly linking to unprotected sex, then linking to, also linked to promiscuous behavior, resulting in child-headed households and also high HIV prevalence. In terms of the effects, we have child-headed households and OVC, high child-headed households and OVC, directly linked to increasing economic burden in society, resulting in also family structure breakdown, which is also directly linked to high morbidity and high mortality and morbidity, because we have a lot of people being sick or also dying. Then we have a decrease in skilled productive labor being linked to high mortality and morbidity. So with HIV, I mean, you can see that the relationship is very cyclical, because it can also start from here, going on to this side. So high HIV prevalence also directly contributing to unemployment and poverty, because you find people are not productive, which also results in poverty. So the relationship can also be opposite. So this is it for this one. I'll leave this to Buki to discuss inadequate access to health.
In terms of inadequate access to health, poor governance and corruption will lead to poor infrastructure, leading to inadequate access to health. Then also there is lack of medical commodities, which can also lead directly to inadequate access to health. And we have stigma in terms of stigmatization when it comes to disease. Like if somebody has HIV, the stigma that is there might make the person not to have access to health, not to go to the hospital or clinic. There is also the issue of poor attitudes of healthcare workers and also lack of skilled health staff. Then the effect of having inadequate access to health will give us reinfection or poor health outcomes. Then there's also the high burden of disease, which may also eventually lead to mortality. And inadequate access to health can cause mortality directly without going through this pathway of high burden of health or even reinfection. It can, if somebody is in a road traffic accident, there won't be any high burden of disease or reinfection of any cause, so it can lead straight to mortality. With alcohol and drug abuse, the causes might be boredom or lack of recreational services. Then there is depression or lack of well-being, having a good well-being. If you feel that that something is wrong with you, you are not emotionally balanced, you can go into drug abuse. Then there is also, among youth, you have desire for experimentation and poor parental guidance. All this will cause alcohol and drug abuse and may eventually lead to GBV, gender-based violence, chronic illnesses such as liver cirrhosis in the case of alcohol, then poor academic outcomes for youths, among youths, then disintegration of family structure, abuse of elderly and children, I mean, in terms of rape, then elevated crime levels, and also HIV.
The connections are not well done. They are not finished. So there are more connections
We are
here.
yet to see more.
Yes. I think there are far much more connections here than what we have put here. Well, to start with, we looked at the food insecurity. And we are saying that food insecurity might be caused by drought, poor marketing systems, unskilled farming, and post-harvest losses, and also geographical location. There are certain areas where there's drought every year. So that might be one of the causes. But let me just take one line. If we look at the drought itself, we might say, well, this drought here is caused by deforestation, global warming. And these two also are caused by these listed down here: urban development, extensive farming, firewood harvesting, buildup of greenhouse gases. So these may affect that, and these affect that, and end up to there. In terms of unskilled farming, we can say that might be caused by poor extension services and poor formal education. So people can't understand the skills involved in the farming. But at the same time, we can say that food insecurity might cause low motivation. But let me leave that one first. Let me finish with the outcomes of this. What happens when you have food insecurity? You end up with low income, which may lead to prostitution, crime, rural to urban migration, hopelessness, poor socioeconomic development. But it may also lead to malnutrition, which may lead to stunted growth of the people, which may lead to vulnerability to diseases, which may also lead to poor educational development among the children. But also food insecurity may lead to food aid dependent communities, which may lead to poor educational development. What I mean, poor education development and poor, actually the lines here can crisscross. We haven't finished that. Okay, the other issue we looked at was the limited self-drive or motivation. And we are saying that this may be caused, I'll point to this one first, social grants. The social grants may lead to that, but also there are other areas. Frequent and devastating natural disasters may lead to that. Urban to rural migration also may lead to poor infrastructure, which may lead to limited education also may lead to that, and diseases may lead to limited education, may lead to that. After the results of that may be a number of these. For example, if I start here, we have crime, prostitution, vulnerability to negative influences, drug and alcohol, which may lead also to socioeconomic development, poor socioeconomic development, and low life expectancy. But you can see, for example, we have prostitution here, we have prostitution here. There can be connections there. But I think at the end of the day, you can see that there is a connection between food insecurity and low motivation. Thank you.